Today we are going to be making some rustic mini fire pots for our outdoor decor. Welcome to CreArtive by Nature. My name is Donna. So for all our fire pots, we're going to be using some tin cans. The first one, I am going to be scratching it with a sanding block as I am creating a rusted technique. You need to get the sanding block in the grooves, and it's good to work on a protective surface. Now I need to just remove any of the bits of adhesive left from the label, and you can use any size tin you like. Okay, so now it's time to do the resting technique. You'll need some hydrogen peroxide, and I put that into a spray bottle, and you're going to spray down your tin can. Now you'll sprinkle it with some salt and allow it to sit and corrode. There will be a reaction between the hydrogen peroxide and the salt, and it will start to corrode. This was just after about 30 minutes. You want to continue to apply the hydrogen peroxide, and this is the effect that you will gain after 3 days. Now, I had done a tin can over a year ago, and you can see here how much it has rusted. At this point, you could give your can a coat of clear sealant to stop the corrosion. So I have my fuel canister, and it is short, so I am just putting some pieces inside my tin can just to elevate my canister. I have a piece of foil and just a little basket, and I put those inside, and now I am just going to flatten things out so my canister sits level. You could put some rocks inside your tin can if you choose. Just use anything you have on hand. So now I'm going to loosen the lid with a flathead screwdriver. So this fuel canister is chafing fuel that I picked up from Dollar Tree. You can buy fuel canisters at home improvement stores, along with any garden center. Just look around. So as you can see, there's a bit of a gap around my fuel canister, so I'm just providing a little bit of a sleeve to fit around my canister, as I don't want any gaps in around it because I am going to be covering it up with some pebbles, and I don't want those pebbles to fall down. So I'm just using some tin foil and just scrunching it until it fits around my fuel canister, and then I am going to place my canister back inside my tin. I have a selection of small pebbles and larger pebbles, but I need to put my lid back over my canister first so the rocks don't fall through. And now I'm just going to add the smaller pebbles to camouflage all the tin foil and the canister. Continue to add as many of the pebbles as you like. I'm even slipping some in between there just to really help camouflage the canister as well as the tin foil. Once you have your rocks in place, you can remove the lid, and then you can take this outside and light it up. So our next tin, I am going to be using this adhesive-backed floral sheet moss. As you can see, it's got the backing there, and an alternative would be to use some preserved reindeer moss. This would give a lot more of a fluffy kind of look. I'm going to be going with the sheet moss, and I'm just going to measure out how much I need. As you can see, this sheet does not quite fit, so I am going to cut it down to size by marking out the height on the back side of my floral moss sheet. Now, if you used a different size can, you might not need to do this step. It just really depends on the type of container you are using. So I've marked out the height of moss that I need, and then I'm just taking my scissors and cutting it out. I'm just partially removing the backing, and then I'm going to stick my tin can onto the moss. Now I am going to add a little bit of hot glue, as I really wanted to make sure that this sticks to my container. I don't know how strong that adhesive is. Now I'll just continue to remove the backing and roll my can onto the moss. Once you get to the end, you can add another bead of hot glue and press your edge into place. And now I'm just going to measure another piece just to fit into that gap. Again, this part is completely optional. It all depends on the size of container you will be using. Once you have your little scrap piece measured out, you can then remove the backing and put it into place. Again, I'm adding a little bit of hot glue first, and then I'll push it into place. Now you're gonna see that I still do have a little bit of a seam, so I am gonna go back in with some additional moss that I had on hand, and I'm going to camouflage that seam. So I'm just going to be using some hot glue and then pressing that moss over the seam. And then you can take some scissors and just trim it off so it's nice and even with the rest of the container. Now, as you look at your container, if there's any additional little gaps with moss, you can just go back in and fill it in, and again, just trim off the excess. So just as my last tin, I need to elevate my canister. So I'm just going to use all the seam pieces that I used in the last little mini fire pot. And just as our last tin, I'm using some pebbles to camouflage the canister and tin foil. Remove the lid, trim off any excess, and take it outside and light it up. For our next mini fire pot, you're going to use some birch bark or any type of bark that you have on hand. I'm just going to pull some strips off of this large piece that I had foraged from the forest. Now, when you collect some birch bark, please just pick up the birch bark that you can find on the forest floor. You do not want to peel it off of the trees. So now I've got all my pieces ready to go, and using some hot glue, I'm just going to press some pieces like a puzzle onto my tin. You will be using quite a bit of hot glue for this project, so just bear that in mind. And as you add the bark onto the glue, you're going to want to push and press the bark into the glue and allow it to set up. You can see here how all my pieces are starting to fit together like a puzzle. So one thing that I like to do is I will take a piece of the bark and trim it off with some scissors, and then I slip it underneath a raw natural edge that's already attached to the tin. So you're gonna generously apply some hot glue and then place the bark into place as shown. So you can definitely see how this has a bit more of a natural look when you do it this way. It does take quite a bit of glue, but I'm really loving the look. Continue to add some pieces of bark until you have your tin all covered up. So I have my tin all covered now, and I'm just adding a few little extra bits here and there. You can add some moss to this, that would be really cool, or some lichens. So again, you're going to need to elevate your canister as needed, and I'm just going to be using the same items as before along with the pebbles, and then you can take it outside and light it up. As always, I always like to know which one is your favorite. I have to say I'm leaning to the birch bark. I have another tutorial of a thrifted pot that I made into a fire pot. I've got that link just to the side. I want to thank you all so much for being here. Have a wonderful day. Bye.